Hey, what's going on everyone? Nick here with a Terminator video, and this time we're going to be going over the dismal box office opening which just happened over the weekend, and what implications this could have on the franchise as a whole, and some of the reasons why this might have happened. So to start things off, Terminator Dark Fate was set to be yet again another reboot of the franchise in a way, while also serving as the quote-unquote true sequel to Judgment Day, Terminator 2, which is James Cameron's film. After that, there were some sequels, T3 Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, and obviously Genesis back in 2015. But all those movies essentially got bad reception and didn't make box office numbers that were, suitable for going forward with. But the bigger thing was that Genesis and now Dark Fate were meant to spawn franchises. They were meant to be the first film in a trilogy that would have course corrected where the Terminator sequels went wrong. But obviously that didn't happen. And according to The Hollywood Reporter, the film could lose up to $120 million after a week opening overseas and its $29 million domestic opening for Dark Fate. What's interesting about Dark Fate though is that it actually didn't open over a holiday weekend. Usually Terminator films open over like a 5-day weekend or something, or at least the last couple have, and that tries to give them a bigger opening. But for some reason they went for the November opening weekend, which was vacated by Wonder Woman, and the film bombed beyond all expectations. Ahead of its launch, it was tracking for around 35 to 40 million, which would have been decent had the international legs been stronger, but unfortunately the film grossed well below expectations at 29 million, and part of that was the mixed early reception. Now, if you guys remember, on my review, I actually did like the film for the most part. There were things that I had issues with, a lot of stuff in the movie wasn't really explained. I guess if you guys have seen the film, some minor spoilers here, but the fact that they killed off John Connor in the beginning of the film was definitely something that I personally felt would upset the fans of the franchise and would possibly put off some casual viewers who know of the franchise, know of like Sarah and John Connor. The fact that you see him die off in the very first scene of the film was definitely something that was going to be like a knee-jerk shock reaction. Looking at interviews after the film's release, I guess that was what they were trying to go for, which doesn't really make too much sense to me because Cameron in the past has notably criticized Alien 3 for doing the exact same thing, but for Dark Fate he was somehow into it and actually supported the idea and wanted to, quote, shock audiences by pulling the rug from underneath them in the first 30 seconds of the film. Now, also contributing to Dark Fate's poor box office opening was the fact that audiences have known the Terminator brand to not be, good movies for quite some time now. The last universally received Terminator film was Judgment Day, and that was way back in the 90s. So similar to the Alien and Predator franchises, it has been decades since we've actually gotten a good entry in those respective series, but yet the executives and studios keep trying to pump out sequels to those franchises that ultimately just tarnish the brand and franchise even further. It's sad to say that Terminator has now joined Alien and Predator yet again in delivering really bad sequels years later that try to reignite the franchise. With Alien, we got Prometheus and Covenant, and with Predator, we got The Predator back in 2018 from Shane Black, which was a whole other mess of a movie behind the scenes, which we have covered previously. So essentially, with Dark Fate underperforming both overseas and domestically, it also bombed in China, which doesn't help because they were really banking on China to be that big country that would make up for the, international total, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The budget of the film is about 185 to 196 million depending on who you ask, so if it only is going to come into like 120 million, opening all worldwide, that does not mean anything good for the future, because the legs are probably going to fall off this thing right away. So where does that leave the franchise? At this point, according to sources at Skydance Media from Hollywood Reporter, they're saying that there are currently no plans to make another film at this time, even though Cameron and director Tim Miller had talked up this being the start of a whole new trilogy that they spent like a whole year mapping out in a writer's room on where sequels could go after Dark Fate, but that stuff is definitely not going to be happening at this point. So where should the franchise go next? If it was up to me, I'd just leave this thing on ice. The franchise has now been terminated for the last time in my opinion. I think they should just let it live out, let the legacy of the first two movies be their own thing and the bad sequels be their own thing as well. But if they really wanted to put another shot at this franchise, I think they should make a streaming series. With the rise of high-budget series and IPs going to series now, with stuff like Jack Ryan or Lord of the Rings or, other stuff like that, I think they could easily make a high-budget Terminator-themed series and get some decent results from it. People look back pretty fondly on the Sarah Connor Chronicles, so I think that a serialized format for Terminator actually could benefit it quite well, and it could also take the series back to its horror roots, making things more grounded and, smaller and self-contained. But what are your guys' thoughts on all this? Where do you think the future of the Terminator franchise could go from here? Did you see Dark Fate? Did you like it? Did you have flaws with it like I did? And what are your thoughts on just how the film is performing overall, and the fact that we're most likely not going to get the planned trilogy at this point? For all things Terminator and the latest in pop culture, be sure to subscribe to HN Entertainment.